Well, sir, I'm Jim Reifinger, okay? And I come up here and volunteer periodically.
What now?
I'm Jim Reifinger.
Reifinger.
And I'm from Richland, and I come up here, about once or twice a month to help out where I can. And this is my hobby. This is one of my hobbies right here is old, I do Western guns and I do 19th century stuff like Civil War era, okay? That's my real hobby. And what we're gonna talk about today is cap and ball pistols between 1836 and 1873. That's about where that was their heyday, okay? Now, about 1831, the guy we all heard of, Sam Colt, come up with the idea of building a revolver. He got his copyright in 1836 when he brought out the Patterson pistol, okay? The Patterson pistol was a 5-shot revolver. They were in the 30 calibers, 31, 36, all that. And it was quite different, okay? Got this right? Here's what a Patterson looks like. What's missing?
Trigger guard.
No trigger guard. Well,
No sight blade.
right. The trigger guard, you didn't need it. Why? Because the trigger did not appear until you cocked the pistol, okay? And it was a fairly decent design. And the country, the Republic of Texas, bought 130 of them, okay? And they bought them for the Texas Navy. Remember that because that's gonna come back again later on about the Texas Navy, okay? Well, when Texas became a state later on, okay, they got moved to the Texas Rangers. The Rangers were real happy about this because at the time the Rangers were dealing with probably the best horse cavalry that ever existed on this land, and that was the Comanche Indians. They were born on the back of a horse, bareback. They could fire 3, 4, sometimes 5 arrows a minute accurately at a full gallop. So what did these Rangers have? They had their rifle, musket usually, or a shotgun. They had a single shot pistol. And after that, we're getting down to Bowie knives and hatchets, okay? Because they had 2 shots before they had to reload. So when they gave them to the Rangers, each Ranger got 2. So now he got his rifle and 10 shots, okay? Made a big difference for him in a fight, okay? A real big difference. And then what happened was they had such good success with that. Their captain by the name of John Coffey Hayes, if you ever want to look up somebody interesting, read about him. He had a hell of a life, okay, as a Texas Ranger captain. He sent another captain by the name of Walker to go talk to Sam Colt. We want a new pistol, but we want one that will take down a horse, hence the term horse pistol, okay? And that's where the beast come along, okay? Now before we go there, well, I'll mention that real quick. Let me see here. Now what happened was, before we go there, you heard that name before. Everybody hears that name, and what do they think of? Cotton gin, right? Well, this is his son. His son was in the same business with his dad up there. And in fact, the name of the town that built around them was Whitneyville. And they did cotton gins and other machinery. But Eli Jr. really got into firearms himself. He was interested also, and he was also a good friend with Sam Colt. Well, what happened was the Army wouldn't buy the Patterson. There was just those 130 basically that went to the Rangers. He went bankrupt. He lost his factory, lost everything in New Jersey. Eli Whitney Jr. let him build his new idea pistol in his factory, the Walker, okay?
Every time you mention a Walker, they always had 1847 in there.
It's got, in fact, it's got 1847 on the side of it.
Is that a real one right
No,
there?
no, these are all replicas, I'm not independently
I've never
wealthy.
seen a real
I'm not
one.
independently wealthy.
No, they used to be
Okay.
$10,000, more
But,
than that.
oh, yeah. And, so that's basically where the Walker came from. And the Walker, 1847, right? It actually remained the most powerful pistol in the world until about 1936 at the advent of the 357 Magnum. Why? This cylinder would hold each cylinder would hold 60 grains of black powder. That's why they blew a lot of them up. Okay? But it was a very powerful gun. One of the flaws with it was this little spring load right here. This thing had a habit of when you shot it, it would get loose and it would drop and then your cylinder couldn't turn. Okay? So that was one of the flaws of it. Okay? So it would work great. It was doing its job, you just had to deal with it. Okay? And each, there we go. There's a real one. Okay? Now each Ranger got two of these.
Two of them.
Two of them. And you couldn't carry them on your belt. They're 4.5 pounds empty. It's like having a 5-pound bag of sugar on the end of your hand. Okay? So what they did was they made what was called a pommel holster. It was a holster that would have a hole in the middle with two holsters with a hole in the middle that would fit over the pommel of your saddle. So your guns were right here in front of your knee on the horse. And that's how they carried them.
Horse pistol.
Yep, horse pistol. Okay. And then they took some, looked at the flaws they had with the Walker, and they came up with the Dragoon. Okay. Now Colt made 3 different models of the Dragoon, but before Colt made any Dragoons, Whitney took some of the old parts from the Walker and produced the Whitney Dragoon. Okay, which is basically the same thing. Okay, and it worked real well. Now, like I said, Colt made 3 models. This is a replica of a 3rd model. And the differences in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd model are very small. Okay? The back of the trigger guard on the 3rd model is round. If you notice that one there, that's a 2nd model. It's flat. If you ever shot a Ruger Super Blackhawk 44 mag full loads, you know how it can hurt. And that's why. That flat back trigger guard.
There's your fingers out of it.
Yep.
That square bend.
Also, the 1st model had the round notches for the bolt stops in the cylinder, and the 2nd and 3rd model ended up with the square ones like we have today. So that was the only basic differences, but on the models. But now the Dragoons put a latch up here to lock that up so it wouldn't drop. Okay, and the Dragoons, instead of a 9-inch barrel, went to an 8-inch barrel. Okay, and it only held 50 grains of black powder. They stopped blowing up. So those were good. Still heavy though. They're pretty much still a horse pistol.
Is that gun chain fire out there? If the bullet won't seat it, if any loose powder was up there, it would chain fire with it.
What they would do, you put your powder in there and use your ball. You want a ball that's a little bit bigger than the hole, so when you press it down, it makes a ring of lead. It seals it. What they would do to make sure, they'd take grease or some lamb's tallow or something like that and put it in the top of the holes. And that would not only help lube it, but it would make sure there was no chain fire going on.
Didn't that Walker have a tapered cylinder right there when the ball went in? It wouldn't shave the lead off the bullet.
It's straight. It's
It was straight. It wasn't shaped like a funnel where it wouldn't shake. Well, you know.
All right. Okay. Now, probably the most popular pistol, cap and ball pistol ever made. I don't care what side of the war you were on. Everybody loved the 51 Navy. 36 caliber, not 44. 36 caliber, okay? Had an octagon barrel, okay? Little bit smaller of a grip, okay? But everyone liked, of course, people were smaller back then too, okay? It had a locking loading lever, okay? And everybody loved this pistol, all right? Let me get my stuff here so I don't forget anything important.
It was cloudy outside, ain't it?
Yeah, changing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, they call it a Navy. Has nothing to do with the Navy, okay? I'm gonna tell you what it has to do with. The reason it's got the name Navy is the engraving that's on the cylinder. Remember I told you earlier that the Texas Navy was in a battle? It was in the Battle of Campeche, down along the Yucatan Peninsula. And when Colt made this pistol, because he did so much work with the Texans, he put an engraving that remembered the Battle of Campeche on this pistol. And that's how it got the name Navy.
Oh, wow.
But the thing is too, almost all 36 calibers became Navy guns. That's what they called them a lot of times.
Was the bullet faster in 36 caliber than 44 with the same amount of powder?
No, it's not, just have less lead, okay? It's probably, not that much less harmful, okay? But the Army wanted a 44, and we'll get to that here in a little bit, okay? So that's pretty much, and this became so popular that they actually started making them in England. There's a London model of this gun too, okay? And it was used for years. Probably one of your Old West heroes that you've all talked about for years carried two of these with ivory handles. Wild Bill Hickok carried them for a long time, even after the Civil War. Okay. And the next pistol we're going to look at is not a Colt. Okay? Remington got in the game.
Oh, yeah.
Okay? A lot of people call this the 58 Remington. Well, that's one of the copyrights. Its real name is the Remington New Model Army. Okay? It's 44 caliber. Okay? And it works just a little bit different. This is the one, if you ever seen the movie Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood, this is the one where he changes cylinders as he's walking down the street in the gunfight, okay? That never really happened in real life.
They
Made good movie.
afford to buy another cylinder, could they?
Made good movie, okay? But notice it has a top strap. The rest of these were what, open top, right?
Oh,
Okay.
it had a strong frame.
It makes it more solid, but there's one problem with black powder guns and a top strap like this. It gums up faster. After you shoot a couple cylinders, you're gonna have to clean it. Okay? But yeah, it's a little bit different. Of course, it has, it's here. And to take it apart, it's easy. That's like they show you. Once you drop the loading lever, you can pull this out, and that pulls out, you can take the cylinder right out of it. Okay? Now, right after that, Colt's coming up with a new pistol. I forgot to show you that one, that's your Remington. And that's the 1860 Army. And about the time they're getting ready to come out with it, and while they're making it during the 60s, Colt's, and this is during the Civil War, 63, I believe, his factory burns down. They had a fire and lost the whole factory again. Okay? So it was really important that Remington was making these pistols, because in the meantime they're kicking out pistols to help with the war effort. Then they got the factory rebuilt, and during that time, we got the 1860 Army. Now, what you're gonna notice is,
Yes, ma'am.
what you're gonna notice is, they're less bulky.
Okay.
They're less bulky. See that? How more slimline this is at the barrel in front of the cylinder than this is? With that big bulk right here? That was a new style. And the reason they could do that was steel was getting better all the time. Like I said, this, I told you early before class, when this one came out, it's mostly iron. That's why it had to be so big, okay? But here's your 1860 Army. What's the difference? It's 44 caliber, but it has a larger grip, okay, which I appreciate. I got big hands, okay? I get a better grip on this than I do on a lot of the other Colts. But that's the 1860 Army.
That's what the Union had too, on it.
Yeah, and well, but I'll be honest with you, right when they first came out, come on in and have a seat. The Confederacy actually got a chance to buy a shipment of them before the embargo started. So the South had them also, okay? They also have them. Of course, over during the war, people would capture stuff from each other too, you know? So that also happened. All right. We are doing cap and ball pistols. We're a little more than halfway through.
Very good.
Okay? Like I said, that has a larger grip. Okay? And now, we already had a 51 Navy, right? Well, they did that new design with the Army, okay? So they built a 61 Navy, that same slim design, 36 cal again. And they even, because of what they called it, they even maintained that naval battle of Campeche from the Mexican War on the cylinder. That's why they called it a Navy. But it's basically the same thing as the 51 Navy, but that new slimmer line, since the steel was better. You see that? Okay? That pretty much, and I'll get back to it again later, that's pretty much, except for a couple of the, okay, of the U.S. pistols during the Civil War. Okay? Now I'm gonna go to the Confederate side.
Brass frame.
Yeah. And not all.
Right.
Now, when you talk about Confederate-made pistols, made in the Confederacy, and I'll also mention some foreign ones they bought, okay? There's that 61 Navy, okay? Then we're gonna talk about cap and ball pistols made in the South, okay? There's a bunch of companies that made them. Big companies, small companies. But almost in every case, it's a copy of the 51 Navy with a round barrel instead of an octagon barrel. Okay? Some of them will have a steel frame, and a lot of them will have a brass frame. Why? Because of the steel shortage. The Confederacy used steel where they had to, the barrel and the cylinder. Okay? But that's why you see brass frame Confederate guns. Okay? Colt never made a brass frame gun. Okay? These were all made in the South. The first one I'm going to talk about is exactly what I was talking about, is a copy of, an exact copy of the 51 Navy, except it has a round barrel. Same gun. Octagon barrel, round barrel. This one has a brass frame. Okay? 36 caliber pretty much do the same thing as that one does. This was called a Griswold and Gunnison. Okay? They were made close to the Macon, Georgia area. okay? A lot of these guns were actually made by slaves. Slaves worked in the factories, okay? This one here, if I remember correctly, Sherman destroyed the factory when he went through there, okay? That they made them all the way up to towards the end of the war when Sherman came through, okay? They made a lot of these, very good pistol, okay? Now, in the very beginning, I told you about Whitney. Well, he also made a regular pistol in the beginning called the Whitney Revolver, okay? And the reason I didn't really put it up there is because I'm going to get back to it, kind of. The South, also near Macon, Georgia, had another factory, and these factories also used to make cotton gins, okay? Called the Spiller and Burr. The Spiller and Burr revolver is an exact copy of the Whitney revolver, except it has a brass frame. Because Whitney made one just like this in all steel. Okay? 36 caliber. Okay? I think there were some made in 44, but the majority were made in 36 caliber. And that's called a Spiller and Burr. Both those two factories there were in Georgia. Okay? One more Confederate gun I'll talk about that they made in the South was made in Texas. It's made in a little town, Victoria, just outside of Houston. It's called the Danson Brothers. Weird, the reason I mention this one is, it kind of uses a 51 Navy frame, but a Dragoon barrel. Okay, kind of mixed two guns, okay, 44 caliber. Okay, the difference in it is, and I'll show you here in a minute. Let's go through these real quick. There's your Griswold and Gunnison that I showed you first. Okay, there's the Spiller and Burr, and this is the Dance Brothers. You know how that round piece is back here is behind those caps on your frame? Notice both these guns are flat right here. Okay?
Yeah.
They didn't waste any steel. They didn't waste any steel. They said we can do without that. Okay?
How about where you got it, where you drop a bullet in there when you rotate the cylinder?
You talking about right here? Yeah. That's the same on all of them. Now, a lot of these replicas, if you're gonna use conical bullets, you gotta actually Dremel them out, open them up a little bit so you can fit it in there. But they're really made for taking just a ball. Round ball. But yeah, if you got a lot of these guns, if you're gonna use a conical bullet like a Johnson and Dow or something, you gotta open them up. Okay. That's the Dance Brothers, and they were made in Texas, and they very well made. But like I said, there was a lot of other little companies, Leach and Rigdon, all those things. They were all copies. They were all copies of the 51 Navy with a round barrel. Some of them steel frame, some of them brass frame.
What did they carry to drive that wedge out with and drive it in? They carry, or just use anything they get?
Anything.
Anything.
Yep. Anything. Okay. Now, the Confederacy also carried a lot of foreign stuff. If you remember with the blockade, a lot of times they had to buy stuff from Europe, England and France or whatever. Now, you'll hear these are three that were very common. You may have heard of the French Lamat. I'll show you a picture of that in a little bit. Okay, and the Lafayette and the British Kerr pistol. They were all cap and ball except the Lafayette. The Lafayette used something that was brand new at the time called pinfire.
Oh yeah.
Pinfire. And pinfire basically was a metal cartridge, one of the first metal cartridges, and they would put primer mixture in there, like a cap and powder and a bullet. They'd have a pin that went down in there, and when the hammer hit that pin on on the side of the cartridge that struck the primer there and set it off. Okay? And that was the lava shot. They made them in 7mm and later, bigger, almost close to 12. Okay? So those were very common. You also in the United States had the Star pistol. Yeah, I don't think the Confederacy ever really got a Star pistol unless they took it in battle. Towards the end of the war, the Union got some of the Star revolvers. Star came out first, one of the first ones to come out with a double action, but the military didn't want double action. They figured it would break too easy, and so they made a single action, and the military bought it. Okay. Now the Lamat, a very different pistol. Okay, 9 shots. Okay, 41 caliber. If you notice under the barrel, you also got a shotgun barrel. It was almost 20 gauge. Once you shot your bullets, you could pull back your hammer and flip the top of it and shoot the shotgun round.
What time in the world they get a firing pin going for that shotgun shell?
It was, the way they did it, it worked. It came right through the cylinder. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And that's called the Lamat. Who made that famous? Who wanted it? Who carried one? Beauregard, General Beauregard. It was designed in the United States, but it was not made here. It was made in France and Belgium.
That shotgun round was buckshot?
From what I understand, whatever they stuck in there, you know, buck and ball or whatever, you know.
There wasn't a slug, there was not a slug specially made for it?
No,
Okay.
it was buckshot. That's that British revolver I told you about, the Kerr, or Carr, some people, it's a side hammer, but it's another cap and ball pistol that England made.
Real gruesome, man.
Yep.
Forgive me for intruding with a bunch of questions, but when you read in the narratives about a blockade runner bringing in a case of pistols, how many pistols was a standard size case? 20, 25,
I'm not
10?
sure, sir. That I don't know.
Thank you.
I don't know.
Thank you. I've seen it before, I didn't know.
Yeah, I'm sure quite a bit in the case. Well, that sounds about right, 2025. Now, here's that pinfire I was telling you about. That was one of the first metal cartridges, okay, before rimfire and centerfire. Now, there's another company making pistols at the same time, but you don't hear about them much in the Civil War because they didn't make full-size guns. You might have heard of these two guys, okay? Oliver Smith and Daniel Wesson, okay, up in New England. They were making pistols, but mostly small caliber pistols. And they actually came out with metallic cartridge pistols too. Okay, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So here's a presentation case of some of the stuff you need for these pistols. You need powder, you need a bullet mold, you need some bullets. Up there in the top right-hand corner, you need caps, okay? Okay, you got all kinds of stuff
That's
here.
a dragoon right there.
Yeah, yep. So, those are the sort of things you need, all right? Remember I said they made paper cartridges?
Yeah, that's what I was,
Yeah. Those look like Johnson and Downs to me.
they're thinking themselves right on in the cartridges, ain't they?
Yep. But I make these, like I told you, I make these at home with coffee filter paper.
How about the way to go to US America right trying to make it?
Yeah, you can buy these boxes. You can send online, you can buy these, look like authentic boxes like that.
Would they work in a Navy coat?
Oh, yeah, no, some of them, like I was telling him earlier, I don't know if you were in here,
I was not.
on these replicas, a lot of times you have to Dremel out this area right here to make it a little bigger so the conical bullets will fit in.
Okay.
Then you just have to re-blue that part, okay? But, so some of the guns they'll go in, some of them, like when I make paper cartridges, I make them all with round balls, so I don't have to worry about it.
You know, Dixie Gun Works, right there in the 50s and 60s, you used to get a replica from them.
I buy stuff from Dixie.
Oh, it's still
Taylor-
around?
Dixie and Taylor and Company up in Winchester,
Oh,
Virginia.
God, Henry, go ahead.
Well, let me tell you what's going on here. Remember I told you that was pretty much almost all the US pistols? Well, remember I told you Smith & Wesson was making pistols, okay? And, let me get my glasses here. The light's dying here. Smith & Wesson that were in conjunction with a gentleman by the name of Roland White. And Roland White held the copyright for completely drilled through cylinders. So Colt couldn't do it yet, because he didn't have the copyright, and he didn't want to pay royalties. The copyright ran out in 1871, okay? So Colt took some of his pistols, like the Army and the Navy, and changed the cylinder, drilled through, okay? And for a cartridge, used the old 44 Henry cartridge from the Henry rifle. And that lasted for 1 year, because the following year, the Peacemaker came out.
1873.
1873, 45 Colt, right? Okay. Also, Smith & Wesson got into the game with the number three Smith & Wesson, which you know is the Schofield, the one that breaks open and ejects and you put it in, which became very popular also. So this right here was the end, pretty much, of the cap and ball frame. Okay. I think that's it right there. Yeah, there's your 45, they made them in 45 Colt and 44-40 for people who owned Winchester 73s. Because they couldn't use the 45 Colt bullet in Winchester 73s because of the way, back then, the way the brass was made, it wouldn't work in the elevator of the lever action. So what Colt did was he made what they called the Frontier model, same gun in 44-40.
That thing had a firing pin on the hammer when you pull it back in.
Yep.
Somewhere along there, they're gonna go to a little short pin in there, that's all, that's modern there.
And Ruger.
Oh,
Okay.
look at that.
There's the 75 Remington. They did the same thing. And there's your number. There's your Schofield. Smith & Wesson.
I never saw one of them on a cowboy movie, that Smith & Wesson, they're all used.
Well, I'll tell you who carried one of them Smith & Wessons. Probably the most notorious bad guys in the Old West. John Wesley Hardin.
Yeah, Smith & Wesson man.
Yeah.
How about that?
Any questions, sir?
Uh,
You want to come up and look at the pistols? You want to come up and look at the pistols at
Yeah,
all?
yeah, you'll be through with it now.
I'm done. The one thing I didn't show
So
you
if
was.
you see a Western movie and that's,